And I'm going to rule your motion out of order.
It's okay.
Because the document is no longer before this body.
Okay.
And this, and I'm not finished.
All right, I'm listening.
And based on the understanding that things were incorporated from the last presentation, that's why the legislation was introduced. Because my understanding, though, you presided over the last meeting,
Yes.
is that the changes in the presentation that the community wanted to have added in, they held it until the last meeting. It was presented at the last meeting and then incorporated into the document. And then that document was passed on to us at the city council level, and we introduced it at the city council. So it is now properly before the Community Development Committee. Now, what you can do, or what this body can do, is recommend what changes they would like to see the city council make.
Let me say
and
this,
the
Michael.
Community Development Committee make to the document at committee next Tuesday at 12:30 when
Michael.
it comes on the agenda.
Let me say this.
Wait,
There's
I
no
haven't
way.
acknowledged it. I haven't
Okay, all right.
yielded the floor.
Ooh, Jesus.
And I want to be clear that we don't want to exceed the authority of this committee. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have order here, and we want to respect everybody's perspective, and we do not disagree. Ladies and gentlemen, please, and committee members, please, we're going to have a respectful conversation. We've been here all night, and we've done this for several meetings, and we're going to continue to have a dialogue, and we're going to continue to work through the issues that are presenting ourselves. But we have to be, even though it may be unpleasant, we have to acknowledge where we are legally, and we have to make sure that we're taking the appropriate actions that this panel is empowered to do. And I'm telling you, this is the way that it needs to be done. There's an active piece of legislation before the Community Development Committee. That legislation contains this plan. If you want that plan amended, it has to be amended at the committee. So if you want to make amendments to that plan, there are two of the authors here on that one sits on the committee, one will be at the committee meeting. Then what needs to happen next is that under new business, after we complete our old business, any amendments that need to be proposed for the plan that you would like to see incorporated need to be introduced and acted on during new business. And that is the appropriate way to handle trying to get that paper.
How do you amend a plan that was never approved by this committee?
Sir,
how do you amend a plan?
Sir, you're out of order, and I want to acknowledge you because you are out of order. If you'd like me to explain again, I will do so again. I will. I will do so again to be clear. What happened at the previous meeting is that, as I was told, and I was not here at the previous meeting, and please, no outbursts from the audience, because this is important. And when people speak out and have outbursts, it's unfair to others who want to hear the information. And so we all want to hear the information. So I was presented with a piece of legislation at the council meeting. They told me it was a completed document that had all of the amendments and all of the attachments and all of the plans involved in it. So when we got that piece of legislation, we do like we normally do at council. We pass it down the road. It obtained signatures from other council members. It was read into the record. It was introduced, and it is now placed on the community development agenda. I have a question. So I'll get to your question, but Yvonne is first. I'm re-explaining so people know exactly where we are. Okay. Exactly where we are is that we have the legislation is before the Community Development Committee. This committee cannot amend papers that are before the City Council, just like this committee can amend bills that are before the Congress of the United States. It is not before us properly any longer. So what needs to happen next is that if we want that paper that is before the Community Development Committee to be amended, it has to be amended at the committee level. And so this panel has the power and the ability to recommend amendments to that document that is before the Community Development Committee. Now, this committee is free to recommend holding it. This committee is free to recommend holding that paper. They are free to recommend filing that paper. They are free to recommend passing that paper. They are free to recommend amending that paper. But that paper is not any longer, we can no longer amend this document because it is before the city council now. And so I will entertain questions at this point. Yvonne is first, and Reverend Beckham, I believe you were next.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I am totally overwhelmed, I must admit. But y'all are slick. Boy, y'all street slick. Y'all way slicker than any nigga I know. But meanwhile, what I want to say is that how could a document move from this committee without the committee having any knowledge of the fact that it was moving? And yes, I did chair the committee. I did chair that meeting. But ain't no way that I'm that stupid that we, at the time that I chaired that meeting, that I would have not known, that I would have, there's no way that I would have knowledge that at that time, that anything from that meeting was moving the council. And not only that, if I'm not mistaken, in the legislation it says that it has to be voted on the committee before it moves. It doesn't. Y'all mean, I'm telling you, ain't no way in the world that this thing should go down like this. And we just sitting here like it's all right. And then you want to put it, and then put us in a position. It's amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, demonstrations are not allowed in the council chamber.
But now I
If you choose to during these proceedings, if this continues, I'm asking you to refrain from demonstration so that we can deal with the situation here and everyone can be clear about I understand, so we can be clear about where we're going from this point. Now, what I'm doing is running the meeting, sir, and I'm going to continue to run the meetings, and there will be order here. And if there isn't order in the audience, I will clear the room of every member except for this panel. I will clear it of everyone in the audience with the exception of the committee members and the media and the staff. And so if we want to we're really serious about finding out what's going on, you can't learn anything with your mouth open. So Yvonne has the floor, and if you insist on being disrespectful, I will fulfill the logical conclusion of your civil disobedience. So we're going to allow her to go on, and we're going to have order in this room. Yvonne, you may continue.
Whew, I tell you, I mean, really, I am definitely speechless at this game that we played in the way that we have dealt with the community and dealt with the committee members. I mean, we should feel a certain kind of way ourselves as committee members, and we know good and well that we had no idea that it was going to move, that paper was going to move as it did, and that resolution was going to be voted on in council on Monday. No, and it had only people would have known is people who were doing it, because the rest of us didn't know. And so, and not only that, the only way that you know that it even happened is that you happened to be at council meeting that day or watch Channel 26. Otherwise, how would you, there was nothing that was sent us via email, there was no phone, there was no communication to let the committee members know that it was moving in that direction and the expeditiousness of the situation. I see why you were so cool and drawing and doodling over there, because you knew what the deal was when we was when I was trying to make the motion. But there is a motion you said that we can make to hold it, then I must make the motion that it be held where it's at or held. Really, I am question. I'm through. I am so through. That is dirty, man.
I was not here at the last meeting, but I don't think any committee member left here under the assumption that document is going to be submitted to council. this week. No one did. This is shite. Ivor Young, if you knew about this, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Councilman Bond, if you were privy to this and part of this, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Brother Mitchell, you ought to be ashamed if you were part and knew about this, and then the mayor's office invest all of you. And you wonder why we want an agreement? Because we don't trust you. And you proved yourself untrustworthy.
Who's next coming down the road?
Right here,
I think we're coming down from the right. You can go ahead, Councilmember Young.
The question was asked of me today, and well, the question that I asked was, okay, at what point is there going to be a formal vote on this document? And we've consistently heard over and over again an opinion, whether it's legal, whether it's ethical, or anything else. All we've heard is an opinion that, well, this body is not required to vote. But the reality is, every month we've got issues related to zoning and land use that come before our MPUs, and we routinely vote on those issues. Even if they're just recommendations, we vote. And those recommendations are passed on to the city council. So for me as a council member, you know, this group deserves no less the same privilege and opportunity to render an opinion that ought to go and be forwarded to the city council for the months of work that has taken place. And I think that's just simply the right thing to do. The content of the document, in terms of what's been presented to us today, as it may sit before the committee. I sit on Community Development and Human Resources Committee, and what I commit to you now is that it will be my motion on Community Development and Human Resources Committee to hold that paper until such time, to hold this paper and not move forward with this paper in that committee until such time that this group has an opportunity to render a formal opinion on it. I think, and I don't think anybody at this table would object to that, because it's simply respectful of the process and the work that's been invested by everybody at the table and you, the audience. So it won't be my plan to vote on anything unless it actively considers the opinion of this group. And so that's just the statement that I'd like to make.
And I don't think that was inconsistent with what I was attempting to explain. We have a live piece of paper that rests in the committee of the city council. This body can make whatever recommendation it would like towards that document, and I recommend that it does, and that it should. It is, at that point, the council, as Mr. Young has pointed out, they can sit on the paper, they can pass the paper. But I would expect that if he makes that recommendation, that they will hold the paper. So no one has betrayed anyone's trust. I wasn't even at the last meeting. But as I was asked to introduce the legislation, I did what city council people do. I introduced the legislation. And so it's before the committee, and if there's anyone here that'd like to make those recommendations, we can do it, as I explained to Yvonne, during new business on our agenda. Are we completed with questions?
No,
we're not going to adjourn the meeting because we're not completed with our business. No, we're not.
Chair.
You have a question, Mr. Mitchell?
No, actually, I have a question and maybe a statement. To be honest with you, you know, I don't really know what I just heard. It's not about clapping and hoorah and hooray. This is not a hoorah moment for me. What I thought I heard, I just want to make sure I'm clear, is that the community benefits plan has already been introduced at the council. I wasn't at the council meeting on Monday, so I'm not sure. but it's already been introduced, and no, I'm not a part of this. I want to make sure that you're clear on that as well. But I want to be very clear. Are you saying, Mr. Chair, that the community benefits plan has already been introduced and included as an exhibit in a piece of legislation that is before the council? I just want to make sure I'm clear about that.
Well, I'll explain it for a third
No,
time.
I'm just asking that yes or no.
No, I'll explain it for a third time, Mr. Mitchell.
Okay.
I was not at this last meeting, and on Monday at the council meeting, I was brought a paper that I was told had all the attachments, had the presentation from Vine City, and that it was completed and ready to be introduced. I sent the paper down the road, which is the custom. It acquired several signatures from other council members. We read it into the record, and it was referred to the Community Development Committee.
Let me
Oh,
just.
no, I'm not finished. I'm not finished. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. That document that is before the Community Development Human Resources Committee, which you referred to that committee as President Pro Tem at the meeting last week, was a document that includes a plan to be voted on by that committee and ultimately the council. Is that a yes or no? I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Well, I'm not in the court of law, Mr.
No, I just want to be clear.
I'll respond to you. What has been introduced is what is before us on this table. Now, if that includes the plan, then as I assume that it did, and I was told that it was, that's what I introduced.
Now, is
And
any...
that is what is before that body.
Just by a show of hands, are there any other members of this committee that were aware of that? I mean, if you were aware of that, raise your hand.
But if I may, also point of
No, I'm just asking,
clarification.
no.
Well, President Mitchell, because I was the one, and let me be clear so everyone knows
She wasn't
why.
addressed.
No, I want to address all of the comments, please. There's a reason that the document was introduced.
Ms. Taylor.
We're at the end of the year, if I may,
Ms.
and
Taylor.
there is.
Hold on, Mr. President.
Ms. Taylor, no.
Hold on, I'm presiding over the meeting.
Mr. President.
Wait, Mr. President.
Point of order. Point of order.
Point of order
Point
is
of
that
order.
you asked, if everyone, if
Mr.
everyone else
Bond,
knew.
I didn't ask for
You
Ms. Taylor to speak in
you
response
asked
to a
for-
question. I asked for
You
a
asked
show
for
of
a show
hands.
of hands, sir.
So can I get that? And then Ms. Taylor can talk all
You
night.
got a show of hands, and then Ms. Taylor asked to speak.
Did I get a show of hands?
Speak before Ms.
I don't know why they gave you a show of hands. Can we give Mr. Mitchell a show of hands?
If you were aware that the plan was going to be introduced on Monday, thereby making really the work of this committee irrelevant at this point. Did anyone know that plan was going to be introduced on Monday? I didn't know, but I just want to make sure I'm not the only
It was announced
boo in the
at
room.
the, and well, the same people that knew about all of the other secretive meetings that have been held that we were not invited to, it's the same group of people. It's been a segmented process. The reason that the paper was introduced was not because of any type of ill respect to the community. It is associated only with process because we're at the end of the year. And if, in fact, regardless of the recommendation from the committee, whether it be pro or con, if it were to go through the city council prior to December the 2nd, it needed to get in the process. So the objective was to get a draft in the process, come back with the book as we've done, make any amendments, suggestions that the committee wanted based on the community, take those back to community development as recommendations, because we were expecting to talk about it tonight. If anyone else has read the legislation, it is clear, number one, that this body does not even have a vote.
Why didn't you tell us?
You
Why
can
didn't you tell
read.
us? No.
We have said this
Well,
all
no,
along.
we're not going to allow you to
Tell
tell
us.
If I may interject, I told you all,
Your tone is disrespectful to the community. Your tone is disrespectful.
Sir, you are out of order. Ms. Taylor was talking, and you were out of order because you
I had my hand up before she did, and you never
Sir,
acknowledged
you
it.
were not acknowledged. The chair had not acknowledged you. She was responding to Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell will get the next turn. If you would like to speak after this exchange, you will be acknowledged.
Okay,
But
thank you.
if we're going to get to an understanding of what's going on, everyone has to be respectful of one another.
So we're,
Everyone has, and I see your hand, Ms. Winslow.
so,
And,
I'm sorry.
is there another hand down there? Okay, so we're gonna go down the road after
Can I finish?
Mr. Mitchell.
Can I finish?
Yeah, I'm gonna allow you to finish. But we have to be respectful of one another, even though we might disagree with one another, or in this case, seem to disagree with one another.
And
You may finish.
thank you. And Mr. Bond, not only at the finance exec meeting 2 weeks ago, but also at this meeting 2 weeks ago, we did discuss a draft plan going before council, which is what went before council. It is not a final plan. The intent was to discuss the plan at this meeting so that, again, amendments, changes, suggestions could be incorporated to go before the community development committee if we in fact were going to make the end of the year schedule. This was all about process. That is it. And I, myself, Ernestine, we were there when we went public and told everyone at the committee meeting, finance exec, that legislation was coming Monday, which it did. And we came back to our last meeting and talked about it at this table and said that we were going to put forth a draft. That is it. We did discuss it.
I didn't hear it.
If no one listened, I apologize, but it was said.
Maybe.
All right, so it was announced at the previous meeting.
Maybe.
Ladies and gentlemen, we can all sing at the same time, but we can't talk together. And if we're going to be respectful and make this work, people have to be respectful, even when you don't agree with what someone is saying. So, at the last meeting, it was announced that a draft would be coming forward. It was announced at the finance executive meeting.
No.
And that meeting is on tape. So there's no way we can't not prove that happened, and that occurred. All right, Mr. Mitchell, you wrap up.
No, you had recognized me.
Well, these meetings are also recorded, so
Let me just.
there's no way to, wait, hold on. I have recognized, but Mr. Mitchell is about to wrap up his comment.
Oh, okay.
All right, you'll be after Ms. Winslow, Mr. Young.
I want to be after him.
Let me just say this. I mean, I really am without words, but I'll say this. What I have just heard is the most twisted thing I've ever heard in my 12 years of being on this council. And I'm trying to put myself right now in the position of someone who's sitting out here in the audience or standing in the back of the room hearing what we just told them as this committee. I think it is deplorable to say that we're going to trump a process that was intended to be a product produced here that will be delivered to the council for the council to consider and do it in the name of process because it's the end of the year. And I don't understand it, and I'm not gonna go for it. And I'm gonna tell you, at the committee meeting next week, I'll be speaking to this. And at the meeting, the next full council meeting, I'll be speaking to it. But I think what I've heard here tonight, I don't even know, I think the word that was levied 3 or 4 months ago, I don't know which one of you levied that word, but the word bamboozle comes to mind. And if we're gonna sit here and say that, wait. I mean, this is ridiculous. If we're gonna sit here and say, that the plan that was supposed to be produced and ratified by this committee is already before the council, and this committee did not know, and we're gonna try to dress up the pig and say that that's actually okay, that is crazy to me. That is crazy. And for us to be able to fix our mouths to say that and to actually make the argument that it makes sense is even more insane. I'm not gonna be a part of it. I'm not gonna be a part of it.
All right.
That we don't have anything to vote on when the word was these committee members are gonna vote is crazy. That's crazy. I've never heard that in my 12 years.
Mr. President, as you exit, I take great umbrage with anyone who says that anyone in a part of this committee acted to deceive the public or acted to deceive any person or undermine this process. I I did not, and I can tell you, I was born and raised in Vine City.
Then you know that.
I stand on my faith and belief in this process and in the community. And I don't regret having introduced this paper to make sure that we can move ahead before all papers die at the end of the year. If we're going to be respectful and get to the bottom of what happened to move the community forward, we have to do it in a manner that is respectful of the process and respectful of one another. And if we're not respectful of one another, then we will never accomplish what we need. Sir, go ahead.
First, I think that we should, as a matter of goodwill, that no one from the community knew about the paper. That we were under the guise that we were gonna produce a community benefits plan, okay? And just the other day, it was posted to the Invest Atlanta website, and before that it had the word framework. And then those words were deleted and then became plan. But no committee member from the community signed off on that or said it was okay. And as a matter of courtesy, that should have taken place. And I think that's why you see such shocked faces. And so I think there should be some kind of explanation for why wouldn't you want to get the support of the community?
Well, I'll say again, to address your concerns, one of the things that happens at the end of the year that perhaps members of the public are not aware of is that legislation that is at committee or not introduced by a certain time will die. That means that we would have to start the process all over again.
So why didn't you communicate that?
Papers moved out.
Why wasn't that communicated to this body? It was not communicated.
Well, I assumed that I was not at the last meeting, so I assumed that it was, and Ms. Taylor Parks has made statements, and I believe Ms. Taylor Parks, that she mentioned that it was mentioned here at the last meeting, and it was definitely mentioned at the presentation at the Finance Committee.
Well, we were in meetings yesterday with Ms. Parks, and she never mentioned that in the community. She never mentioned that.
First of all, wait a minute, you talking about me now. First of all, I have nothing to hide from this community. I have been very open and honest and have come to meetings, and at the meeting that I attended yesterday, we were talking about a detour plan. So I responded to the subject matter that was there. I will not be penalized for this. I talked about it, and you all know that everybody has read everything and interpreted everything that they have wanted to interpret. At the end of the day, the bottom line is that we were here tonight to have a recommendation made. That was the intent. But what has happened is in you all's private meetings yesterday and the day before, your plan that you did not share with anyone else obviously is in contradiction with what is happening. So if we had an opportunity to work together and we knew about all of the meetings outside of the published meetings and the outside meetings and the plans to do this and the motions to do that, then we could have worked together better. No, I know about it
We're not
afterwards.
going to have any outbursts in here. Well, no. We're not going to have, I got you, Mr. Young. We're not going to have any outbursts in here, and we're going to continue to have order in here. Because there are factions in the community that would like to see this process break down, and I, for one, am not one to allow it to break down. We still have meetings scheduled, and the community still has a seat at the table, and we're going to continue to deliberate, and we're going to move on with our agenda tonight. And those that walk out the door, I'm sorry that you're leaving, but you don't have to. This is a process that's going to go on, that's going to go on to a good conclusion for the community. And I want to restate again, I guess if we're going to toss around community credentials, I was born and raised in Vine City. I was there when they built the dome the first time. I watched what happened in the community for folks who got money, well-meaning people who couldn't accomplish their goals. I'm committed to that not happening again. And I want to make sure that everybody has a voice here tonight to make sure they get their concerns out but we're gonna follow our agenda. We're gonna do what we said that we're going to do. I'm gonna ask for recommendations to be forwarded to the Community Development Committee next week, and we're gonna stick with the process, and we're gonna make the process work. We're not gonna be sidetracked, and if I owe anyone an apology and people didn't know, I apologize, because I assumed and I believe Ms. Taylor Parks, and I know her character, and I believe what she told me. And I believe that it was mentioned at this meeting, as was stated, that this meeting is recorded, and it was mentioned at the Finance Committee. Well, regardless of what has happened, the water has now gone under the bridge, and we're still gonna move forward. And we're still gonna go forward. And we're not gonna be deterred or shaken by what has happened.
We're shaking, for sure.
Well, I apologize for that personally to you. I'm the author of the legislation. I'm carrying it, and I've gotten other signatures, Mr. Young and some others. But we believe that we're doing the right thing, and we're going to be responsive to the community. And we're going to follow our agenda tonight, just as we had planned. So for the shock and awe, I as chair, I as your city council person, I as your neighbor, apologize to you. So I am sorry. And so with that, we are going to move on. So next was Ms. Winslow, and then Mr. Young.
I just wanted to remind people that early on when we were meeting over at Invest Atlanta, that there were statements made that we needed to be finished with this process by the end of this year. We are at the end of the year. We only have one other council meeting for 2013, and that is on December 2nd. So when the paper came to me, yes, I signed it when it came down the road, because I knew that this was the end of the year. And so anybody that feels as though they've been bamboozled and all of these things, for those of you who were in the room early on, if you go back in your memory banks, there were statements made that we needed to be finished with this process by the end of the year, because I think early next year we've got to float those bonds. And that's what was talked about.
Ooh, that's the.
So I'm saying what was said in the room. It may be uncomfortable for me to say it like that, but that's what we talked about.
So I was going to be last.
And I have a stake in this too. You know, I have the Atlanta Downtown neighborhood organization that I represent along with Castleberry Hill. And I'm not trying to bamboozle anybody or lie to anybody or have any secret meetings or any of those things. I think I've been to just about every meeting here. I think I missed one meeting. I think Councilmember Bond may have missed one meeting. So we've all, in fact, most of us up here, we have been here through this entire process. You know, and I think that for those people, I'm not gonna say that. I'm just gonna say, I think that those of you out in the audience know who's been here, okay? So if we weren't concerned, we wouldn't have been here through all these meetings. You've been here, you've been concerned. Okay, you know those of us who have been here and listened and who have been forthcoming. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Young, and he's last, and we're going to move on to the next agenda item after his statement. Oh, I'm sorry. You go first, and then Mr. Young.
Yeah, maybe I'm confused, but the legislation that created this committee says that the city council and the mayor will adopt and approve upon completion. And when we left here last week, I don't think anybody, at least speaking for myself and some other committee members, we did not come to a completion. What we were told at the last meeting was that by Friday there'd be a draft number 4 posted on the Invest Atlanta website. That's what we were told. If on Monday you received a paper, presented a paper, thinking that we were complete, that wasn't the case. And now the committee is in a position where all we can do is make a recommendation to file, to hold, to make an amendment to a non-completed paper, which the committee presumably could go ahead and process as that completed document, no amendments, no recommendations to be done with. And I think that's an affront to the work this committee has put in so far and still needs to do to get it to that plan completion.
Well, I'll apologize to you personally, and I think what probably has happened is on the back halls here, there are papers that are introduced almost on a routine basis that are incomplete, that are not, that are not, well, they're not completed. And so they're introduced so that they can begin to be in the process, so by the time the committee comes around, you would have a substitute or the balance of what you needed for the paper. And so when, I believe what has happened is that when they gave me the paper, it was referred to as what we would call down here, well, a draft, but we would call it a dummy, because it doesn't have the guts or the body attached to it. And so we would expect that at committee, that we would add those things after this meeting. And I think that is what has happened. It's caused the confusion.
I understand what a placeholder is, but based upon how we concluded the last meeting, and that was not presented, I think we've been treated as dummies rather than you presenting a dummy paper on our behalf to the committee.
Well, the reason why the paper is put in place is because after the second, any piece of legislation that is before the city council is effectively dead. So for it to even be considered at all, it would have had to have been introduced last Monday. Because if you had introduced it on the second, you know, the year is over. There's no place for the paper to go.
We're not ready.
And so, again, I'll extend a personal apology to you. I'm sorry for this to have happened, and it was not the intention to shock and dismay the public or members of the committee. All right, Mr. Young.
This really became an issue tonight when this committee, this body, this group that's routinely been taking motions and voting on things and deliberating for months, when a member offered a motion and they weren't allowed, they actually ruled out of order in offering the motion not to take action on the paper, on the plan that's before us. And for the life of me, as I said, for the life of me, I've never thought that we were participating in a process that would not have resulted in some finite action by the group, whether it be a recommendation or a final approval or what have you. And I think as the committee member was ruled out of order in offering the motion, that was obviously a mistake. That was a mistake. The last I checked, everybody up here is human, and there's a lot of energy going on in the room. Some of it honorable, some of it less than honorable. There's some motives of individuals and organizations in the room. Some of it honorable, some of it less than honorable. And there are some that would gain great momentum in their efforts to discredit the hard work that you, the public, and this committee have been a part of for months. There's some that would gain great momentum in their efforts to discredit this process. But the reason that we're still sitting here at the table is because we are a group of people that know right from wrong. And the last I checked, within the context of the people sitting at this table and the audience, we can all sit here and agree that denying a member of this group an opportunity to offer a motion on the work that we've done, denying them was a wrong act. But I think part of it is the misinterpretation of the power of this organization in terms of what it was charged to do. we're not, you know, as the district council member where most of this stuff is taking place, my commitment to you, the paper that was introduced, that Ms. Winslow referenced, that Mr. Bond introduced, that I signed on to, it was absolutely introduced and presented to me as a placeholder. But it was never this council member's expectation that it wasn't still before this body, that there was still work being done, that there would not be a recommendation offered. We hold papers, and you should know, we hold papers oftentimes for months before we take action on them, introducing them until such time we can have a completed document, and once it's nodded and everybody agrees to it, we take the amended document and we substitute it for what's before the council. And I'm absolutely confident that my colleague, Mr. Bond, myself, Ms. Winslow, the paper that I signed on to that was introduced by Mr. Bond, there was no intention to not respect the will of this group. That was done tonight. I mean, it was done. And this panel, this member, and all I am is a member, we're not accepting that. That's not right, period. As the paper, as it was introduced, it simply took this document as it was presented last week, including the entire presentation by the neighborhood, unedited, and created this, and attached it to a piece of legislation, and then it went, and then it moved forward. This is not the final document. What's before the committee and what was introduced last Monday is not the final document. And my commitment to you is unless this body offers an affirmative recommendation, this group can offer an affirmative recommendation to what's being offered, it's going to be my recommendation that that it continue to be held in committee until such time that we can offer a formal recommendation on this paper, period. And again, as Mr. Bond ably says, you know, we're not the legislative body that acts on council legislation, but I am here committed in telling you that this paper is not going to move forward until such time this body offers a formal recommendation. And there are members of this panel that may agree or may disagree. That's our individual right up here. But the weight of this panel has value. It has value. It's an important. Whether the majority of us agree or disagree, that opinion should move before the committee before any action is taken on it. And so, I'll make a motion. I make a motion that.
Wait, Mr. Young, before you make your motion.
Yes, sir.
Because I've asked that we do this under new business and that we follow.
Yes,
our
sir.
agenda.
Yes, sir.
So if you would hold your
Very good, sir.
new business, I would appreciate it. And I don't feel that I was wrong in ruling Yvonne out of order, simply because the paper is not before us here, technically anymore, even though this document is here. So if we were to amend this, we would still have to go back to the committee and ask them to amend it to be just like this. So do you understand? So it is, you know, we would still have to go back to the committee and ask them to change it. And that's why I ruled you out of order. And it wasn't to disparage you or disrupt you, or God knows it wasn't to make this meeting explode either. But that's why it was done. And so now we're at
Mr. Bond, to your benefit, to your credit, Mr. Bond is crazy as all this sounds. Mr. Bond is trying to aggressively move the work that we've done forward to a point of approval. Is it ready to be approved? No, it's not. But the reality is, the reality is, it is not far from being approved, and there are those in the room who don't want it approved.
Right.
So the reality is, these communities will not be denied these resources. by folks who want to interlope, disrupt what's being done, and either discredit any member, including the chair. There's no benefit. There's nobody up here that's expendable, including the community. So this game of pitting us against each other, y'all need to put that someplace. Because we're all here for the same reason. Mistakes made, admit the mistakes, and move on. Are people up here human and capable of making errors? Yeah. But in a legislative process, when we're trying to meet schedules and deadlines, you consider those things. Do they usurp the power of this committee, of the work that you've done? No, they don't. They should never, and they won't.
They absolutely will not, Mr. Young, and thank you for your statement. Now, we're at old business. Is there any old business to come before us?
I just want one thing. Yeah,
Yes, Ms. Taylor
I just
Park.
want to say that if we were trying to bamboozle the community, we would have tried to get or asked council to pass a resolution on Monday. The intent, and I just want to be clear while the room is quiet, is that it was in draft form. I think you had mentioned the word final, but and then you corrected it. It was in draft form to be submitted as a placeholder only, based on the outcome of this meeting, for the information again to be submitted and recommended to the community development meeting on Tuesday, based on what this committee came up with amendments. I just wanted to repeat that. That's important to note, because otherwise we would have tried to get the legislation passed in resolution form on Monday, and that was never discussed, nor was it ever an option.
That's correct, because resolutions can be introduced and passed at the same meeting. So if someone had an ill hand or ill intentions or wanted to do a quick run around the community, Monday would have been the day to do it. Now we're at new business, and I'm going to ask, are there any amendments or proposed amendments for this plan? We'll entertain those right now.
Ms. Jones, I think you were going to offer a motion. I think you offered one earlier, right?
Yeah, that we don't move any further. Then this thing has moved tonight already before us.
Well,
knowing.
before you make that motion,
What?
I want to get to anything about changing the document first.
I don't think
I have
about changing
Does
that.
anybody have something to add? Or
Yeah, well,
I sent my stuff in.
I first want to,
Then I'll get to you, Mr. Young.
because I feel that the committee has something valuable to offer, I think it's important that we finish up our work. And I think that
Work, Marcus.
I think we need at least 2 weeks because we just really seen this document in its final form today. I mean, there were categories, but it was changing. It was a working, moving document. And so I'm going to ask that as part of any motion that Invest Atlanta immediately allow this committee to hire or select a consultant to take this framework and put it into SMART goals in a way that is specific. Because what we have is aspirational. And I think if we're going to do this differently, we have to take a more focused approach so we get the outcome that we're looking at.
Before I entertain a second, is there anybody that has an amendment to the document before we do anything about holding or putting things off?
A second.
Well, I have amendments.
I haven't heard a second yet, so I'm asking, before I do, I'm asking for real amendments to the document.
I have 3 amendments.
Okay, so we got some amendments here first. I'll come back to you about your motion.
The amendments are under the quality of life component that is already included in the actual legislation that was introduced. But the language, and I think Justin is taking that, the language should read that every 45 days or every 30 to 45 days prior to the start of construction, the community is given an opportunity to meet with the construction teams, City of Atlanta, and other stakeholders regarding the construction process. Number 2, that once construction starts, the city will have hired a project manager and/or liaison to represent the community and to interface with the contractors and the labor force on site regarding ongoing issues that may impact their daily quality of life. And 3, post-construction, that a plan is put in place prior to the completion of construction, that the City of Atlanta oversees continued as it relates to the impact and quality of life for the adjacent communities. Meaning sound, traffic, those things that once the stadium is open and events are taking place, we will still have a venue to monitor that so that we will know how the community has been affected. So we're not walking away once the project is up and completed.
All right, is there any discussion on the amendment? Is there a second? Been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Yes.
My mic is off.
It may have gone down. Let's try it.
Just one note is it clear and it's indicated who's responsible for planning the meeting in the verbiage, especially the first one?
The first one for the planning of the meetings, it would be the City of Atlanta and Invest Atlanta.
Okay, I just want to be specific about that because if it isn't somebody's responsibility, it's nobody's responsibility. That was just my only caveat on that. Okay.
Right. With the base, and we can add to that language that the core group initially, I mean, not the only group, but the core group would start with this body. So all of the communities are represented and then it would grow from there.
Perfect.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, it's unanimous. Is there any other amendment?
I have
for
an
the-
addition.
I have addition as well.
For the language of the document?
Under section 3.13, historic preservation, there's an A, there's a B. I want to add C, preserve those landmarks identified and sites identified. So that,
Preserve
as it
historic.
stands now, it just says identify the landmarks. We know we've already identified landmarks. We want to put a C where we preserve those landmarks and those sites identified.
Was there a second?
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Unanimous. Anyone else have any verbiage changes to this document? Any other amendments related to this document?
Yeah, I'd like to add some, add a list of projects to the document. 740 Cameron Alexander, Magnolia Street, Vine City Plaza.
Where you amended it to?
Catalytic projects.
Okay. So are there any, well, we'll go ahead and make
Right. The Merchant Marks, Project Work Ready, English Avenue Campus Restoration.
Start when we start. Are you saying 740 and then that one, or?
And yeah, these are a list of projects that I want to put under the catalytic projects
Where is that?
scope.
Okay, well, is there a second to the motion? Is there a second?
I second motion.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Ms. Garrett.
So one of the things that we did intentionally in the plan itself is we did not list specific projects. We have the projects listed in the exhibit to the plan, which is
Section J.
Section J. And so that concept list has all of the projects, Yvonne, that you mentioned. We did not want to put the projects in the plan because there is still an application cycle, and projects would have to come through that application cycle. So the intent of the plan was just to talk about concepts. And the projects that you mentioned specifically could fall under the category of development that activates the area adjacent to the NSP, or interior commercial node development, or
Right.
retail development. But We haven't done that in any of the other categories intentionally, and I would not recommend that we do
Well, the
that.
thing about it is
I have a question.
you may not, you may, well, that,
Bob has it before, hold on.
yeah, thank you. Is that the issue with the plan as it is right now is that it's nothing specific and it doesn't have enough, information that's included in the plan, and that's one of the reasons why it should stay in with this committee until it's further developed. And these are the type of things that need to go into it, so we'll know where we're going and how we're going to get there.
Okay, there's concern down here, let's see. Yeah,
And that would be improper. Number one, the process was to list no projects.
Who
And
said that?
wait a minute now, I'm making my statement like you made yours. Now, there were a list of projects that Vine City had, that the merchants had, and we followed the guidelines that said no projects listed. So if you're gonna select a few projects to list, then we gotta list all of them. And how that wouldn't be equitable.
Equitable, huh?
all right,
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. DeMarcus.
I think that if anyone on the committee has a project that they want to list, that they should be able to list that project. When Mr. Blank decided that he wanted a stadium, he listed his project. He said, I want a stadium. And then he said how much he wanted to spend for it. Hold on, I have the floor. And he also said how much hotel motel tax he would need. And so I think it's important to be specific. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't still have to go through the process and Invest Atlanta. But I think in terms of procurement, there's only so much land, so we can be specific, or there are specific projects that can take place in our community, and I think we should have a right to name them, as should any other community who wants to name their projects. I don't think there should be any prohibition against that. I don't think there's nothing that's hurtful or harmful about that. And we all agreed when we started the community benefits committee and we met as a group that we would support each other. And so I think that it's important that those projects be listed.
Ms. Taylor Park.
I wanted to ask Yvonne to repeat her list because under the exhibits, and I know Ernestine just said this, but I have a proposal. Under the exhibits, it has the Community Benefits Plan Scope of Work Prioritization. If in fact the projects, because they are listed like 740 Cameron Alexander Boulevard, the English Avenue School, they are listed in here. Maybe the committee could consider taking the prioritization list and making it a part of the actual plan. That is under section, and because it has specific projects listed. So it is under Plan K. However, in that area, we would still need to make a statement that says that these projects, the finalization or recommendation or implementation of these projects are based on the approval of the application process. But these projects are listed and they all came from the community, and that is why we made an example. But if you'd like to make them a part of, okay, then that would be.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment, thank you.
Will we have an opportunity to add more?
No, I think that these were the ones that were a priority and that have been identified.
I think that's not true.
No, they're under the main ones that have been identified and discussed over and over again, all the way in the back, Kato.
I understand, but I understand why some people did not list their projects. And they're not listed anywhere. I know Oasis isn't listed anywhere. The Walking Museum is listed. There's other people that did not list their projects.
And what you want to add?
And so I'm adding, so if they can't be added, we can't go back and check all our documents and make sure everybody's project is added. It gives another project unbiased. It makes it biased.
Yes.
My recommendation would be that we leave the specific projects in the exhibits, because putting the projects Putting the projects in the plan does not give credence to the application and evaluation process. And you would have a list of projects, some of which may get funded, some of which may not get funded. So the concept is there. It does not mean that that applicant or organization cannot submit an application. And it falls under that concept, and it would be given the same due consideration. But putting a list of projects, I mean, we could have 50 projects listed, and it really would not be, it would not be productive for the plan to put that in there.
I want to say something.
There's a hand down.
Mr. Chair, it's very obvious, we can add our wish list to the thing, so I'm offering a motion that those projects that are not being added tonight, because we didn't know that we could add projects, if we're going to accept projects, then we need to be able to bring a list of projects from Vine City, and also the MLK merchants.
Wait, hold on one second. Wait, hold on one second. You can't, so you're making a substitute motion to add projects that are not on the table tonight. Is that what it is?
The reason whether it's a motion, it could be a statement. I'm saying that we did not know that we could list projects. Since we are allowing projects to be added, we don't want problems from our residents saying that they were not given an opportunity to put their projects on the table. So we're not prepared to put all of the list on the table tonight. So we need an opportunity to go back to the communities and the businesses and get their projects and bring them back to the table.
That sounds good.
Since it was my motion, Mr. Bond, may I?
Your friendly amendment.
Right, so am I hearing you right? Those that we are familiar, that you all can name this evening,
Okay.
we would name them and add them to this document, which is an exhibit now. The motion is to make this exhibit a part of the actual plan. So we're moving it up, and then you're saying that you want to come forward with a list of projects for submission to the community, to the council stage or phase. So the timeline, in order to do that, would it be feasible that we would have that list by Monday?
You can have it.
We'll just say, we'll
Well,
do
and you said we can
Yvonne's
give some
motion
now?
with your friendly amendment on condition that we get the information.
Yes, sir.
So you all have to make sure you produce the
It
information.
was.
For the sake of clarity.
But do we, okay, go ahead.
No, this is hers, it's going
No, this is
forward.
her- this is her
It's
motion.
Yvonne's motion.
Well, we're adding all the.
I don't feel no way. I understand what it is.
Right, we're adding all this stuff. Okay, Miss
That's what we're
Winslow.
adding to.
Right, that's what we're adding.
We're adding to the plan.
And so, so we're saying any other, project that is, in the area can be added to the list by Monday, is that what we're saying?
Yes, we're asking you to do that. Mr. Young.
You know,
It still is no prioritization to it.
we are
Well, Mr. Young has the floor.
we are absolutely reacting like assuming that whatever your individual project is, it absolutely has no hope of being funded unless it's listed here. What does that sound like?
Right.
There are categories that are listed in this plan. What we're doing is eroding the characteristic of this plan by getting specific and implying, not committing, but implying that because your project may be listed, there's an advantage by listing your project in this plan. And that is just sending the wrong message in terms of what we should be delivering to these constituents who are demanding, they're demanding projects. And